If funding for Homeland Security lapses, Washington Democrats are going to bear the responsibility. Earlier this week, the President criticized the inappropriate use of the filibuster. Well, I don't think we need any more lectures. What we need to do is he needs to pick up the phone and call his own party to tell them to move ahead.
Despite what many people predicted, this is not an easy time to be a Republican in Washington. The president continues to roll forward unchecked with his various plans and schemes to ensure his way is the highway. War powers are tossed about with the ambiguity of someone choosing different colored socks. And the lagging of doing something substantive on immigration has led us to a new realization from the ballot box. We got plenty to dig into as we welcome back to MidPoint the Republican member of the U.S. House of Representatives for the 27th District in Texas, who learned how to deal with an ever-changing world as a radio disc jockey in high school and college. Trust me, it comes in handy. Blake Farenthold joins us on the show. Congressman, good to talk to you again.
Howdy.
Howdy. Let's get right to work, because this has got a lot of people talking, as a matter of fact. The president's temporary deportation amnesty, according to state elections officials testifying to Congress on Thursday, will make it easier for illegals to improperly register and vote in elections. How incensed are you by this?
It is absolutely infuriating. This is what happens when you have one man in charge and you overlook the way the Founding Fathers intended it going through Congress. If we'd have looked at the immigration issue through Congress, gotten everybody's input, we'd have come up with a better solution. But no, the president would rather sit back in the Oval Office, sip a beer, and make the law all by himself.
Let's make this very clear so that people understand. This means that if you are not a citizen of the United States, according to this and the state elections officials, you are allowed to vote, which then basically could put someone into office that could help your specific cause.
Well, it doesn't necessarily allow you to vote. But
Okay.
what happens is when you get a Social Security card and you've got a driver's license,
Right.
that's about all the identification the voter registrars look for. So there's no mechanism in place to determine whether or not, in many states, to determine whether or not somebody with a driver's license, Social Security card, is a citizen.
Well, I think here it is. The secretaries of state from Ohio and Kansas both said they don't have the tools to sniff out any illegal immigrants who register anyway. So there's this huge gap that we have here. Even if they register, they can't find them. So what can be done at this point? Because it would seem to many people that the president has basically put up a roadblock and there is nothing you or anybody else in Congress can do about this.
Well, the states are going to have to come up with some better ways to check citizenship. I think we need to relook at how we do Social Security cards. Maybe we have a pink Social Security card for non-citizens and a red one for citizens.
What about having some
or
sort
a blue
of,
one for citizens?
perhaps maybe even a DNA check or something on the Social Security card? Because you know ACLU and many other people will get involved in that immediately.
Well, I tell you, the Social Security card is incredibly insecure. It was never intended to be used as an ID. And quite frankly, I worry about a government-issued national ID. But you're certainly going to have to look at some ways to improve the security of the system.
I think also something else that we need to point out is apparently, according to what's going around here, that if the immigrants, or immigrants, illegals, whatever people want to call them, I mean, there's a million different ways to say this now.
Persons not lawfully present in the United States is the politically correct term.
Okay, we'll let politically correct and speak alongside with what everything else that we've used here now. But apparently, if they have a pay slip now, they are even eligible to perhaps apply for tax refunds. What is this about? Because this just sounds ridiculous at its core.
It does, but the way our tax code is written in the Earned Income Tax Credit, there is the potential that they qualify. Again, we are suffering the consequences for the president doing this unilaterally and not going through the legislative process where the committees have hearings, we hear from the experts, and we draft the law in a way that it has the intended result.
But what can you do right now, Congressman? Because I guarantee the people in the 27th District and around the country who will be incensed by this, they'll look at me, they'll look at you, and they'll say, all right, it looks like the president's just got you, Congressman.
But we're right in the middle of having hearings discovering these problems. Obviously, we're going to propose legislation to close some of these loopholes. The question is, as with everything that we're trying to do, to enact a law requires the president to sign it or a two-thirds majority of both houses to override the veto. And unfortunately, we don't have the White House and we don't have those numbers in either house.
It sounds to me as if some people maybe need to get a spine.
Well, listen, I've started speaking a lot about this when I'm talking to folks back in Texas. And my line is, if you're one of those people who sat at home and didn't vote in the last election, you're responsible for Obama being president, and this is your fault.
All right,
and you'll always see 2 or 3 heads kind of hanging in shame.
All right, Congressman, hang on just a couple of minutes here. We're going to come back. We've got to talk about a few things with Congressman Blake Farenthold. We're going to dive into those presidential war powers and what, if anything, they really mean to spending more money and likely not winning another war. Plus, we're going to talk about YODA right here on MidPoint. All right, let's get back to work with Republican Texas Congressman Blake Farenthold joining us here on MidPoint. Congressman, the president's authorization for use of military force, AUMF, against the Islamic State has a tremendous amount of people confused, befuddled, wondering exactly what it means, looking at the language, saying that it pretty much renders itself effectively meaningless. What was your reaction?
Crazy. I think he wants us to pass his, so when it fails, he can blame Congress. We need to go after ISIS, no holds barred. I would support a AUMF that gives the president the full authority to go after ISIS any way that he sees fit.
But what about those people then who would fire back and say, Congressman, we don't want more Americans dying for another country here. They can't take care of themselves. We're the world's cops. We're already thinned out across the world, and we're spending $531 billion more of our taxpayer money, and we've still got killers running roughshod.
Well, an authorization to use all resources available is the way to do it. You don't go into battle halfway. We'll lose more Americans if we send our men and women into harm's way with their hands tied behind their backs. If we're going to go into this, we need to go all in.
Then what would you, I mean, in your opinion then, what to you is all in?
Well, again, the problem is you've got to have somebody who's in charge. I'm not a big fan of President Obama's, but he was elected president. That makes him commander-in-chief. So we need to give him full authority to do what he does. Quite frankly, I think Chuck Norris would be the one to send in, not President Obama.
And now, no, of course, he is Texan. You haven't had a chance to talk with Chuck about it, have you?
No, I have not.
Okay, because you do know that the entire world trembles at the mere thought of Chuck Norris, and it's not a world, it's Chuck Norris.
And I don't mean to make light of a serious situation.
No, but I mean, I think what you're saying is you'd like to get somebody in there basically to do the job.
Exactly. You got a president who I don't think is committed to the war on terror, does not realize that the threat is from radical Islam and not just a few crazies out there. The president doesn't I don't think he gets it, and I don't think his heart's behind it, and that really worries me.
Before we get out of here, I want to make sure we talk about the You Own Devices Act, which is called YODA, that you've announced that you're pushing right here. Tell us a little bit about this, because this is, I mean, reselling smart appliances. That's what this is?
Right. So what happens is you buy things and you license software. What happens when the thing you buy has software in it? So imagine your car has all this software that makes it run. You go to sell it. When the new buyer puts the key in it, something pops up on the dashboard that says, please contact General Motors to relicense the software that makes this car run. So my bill would say, if something's necessary to make something operate, like the operating system that's embedded in smartphones or cars or things that goes with the device when you sell it, and you can't relicense it. You can't make the new buyer relicense it.
It seems to make a tremendous amount of sense, which right away speaks to me and says, you've made some sense here. Is anybody else going to get this and understand that it's common sense?
Well, it's a little, it's a little bit techno geek, but it's a similar problem to the problem you have with your locked cell phone. So you can't buy a used cell phone and move it from one carrier to another. It's a similar problem.
Do you think then that it won't get, because you're on hiatus right now for the moment, you're back home, but do you think this will get taken up soon, or is this something that is looking like it's going to sit for a while?
I think it's growing some momentum. There are a lot of folks behind it. Obviously, there's some software developers that have some issues with it. I think we're going to get to a point where we find common ground. But we got lots of supporters like Goodwill that sells a lot of resells a lot of stuff. Librarians and the like.
All right, I only got about a minute or so left here. We'll move from YODA now to one last serious subject here, and that is, of course, the government shutdown. There are those people saying now that it looks like the government will shut down, that the immigration battle, the Department of Homeland Security funding, it will all come to a head. And there are people now saying that the Republicans are going to get blamed again. And there are, quite frankly, Congressman, there are people saying the president has done a pretty good job. He has backed you and the other Republicans into a corner that you can't get out of.
Well, they've certainly out-messaged us on this. We've passed a bill funding the Department of Homeland Security a month ago. We couldn't get it the 60 votes necessary to move it on to the president's desk in the Senate because the Democrats are blocking it. We sent something that funds all of DHS except the president's unconstitutional executive amnesty. It's the broken Senate that's the problem. It's not House Republicans.
Are you fearful, though, that the government will shut down and you and your fellow Republicans will once again take all the heat? I
think we'll take the heat for anything that happens because we get out-messaged and a good chunk of the media is biased towards the other side. I am worried about it, but remember, all of the government is funded except the Department of Homeland Security, and in the event there is a, and I'm using air quotes here, shutdown, I think 95% of the Department of Homeland Security are deemed essential personnel and will end up working anyway.
That is part of the message that needs to get out there, and we're happy to pass it on because, again, it is the fact of what's happening. Congressman Blake Farenthold, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much for joining us.
And good being with you. Have a good one.
All right, take care. A triple murder in a college town, hate crime, or simply another shooting by a hateful madman with bullets to spare. That's on the docket when we continue next, where we question everything on MidPoint.